Today, I'm going to talk about my least favorite thing on the planet when it comes to mechanical stuff, and that is bolt extraction. There's nothing worse than breaking a bolt. Well, maybe, but breaking a bolt, top three for sure. When you work on old stuff like I do, it's just a normal thing. 98% of the time, I use a welder. If you have a welder, welding's always the best in my opinion. I'll show later on how I do that. If you don't have a welder,
and may God have mercy on your soul,
because it can get bad very, very quick, and there's really no out. You just got to keep drilling, keep trying, and it's just a real pain. But not every situation a welder is really feasible. You could be doing interior work, maybe a tight quarters area. Either way, everybody needs some bolt extraction kits. Until today, I thought I was pretty good at bolt extraction. Little did I know, I have no clue what the hell I'm doing. I fought and fought these. I thought this video would be quick and easy. You know, it's kind of all staged bolt extraction. Hell no. This was a pain in the rear. I broke almost every extractor I have. It's just unbelievable the amount of troubles I've had with this. The whole setup was broken bolts inside the cylinder heads. I used soft grade bolts, just ran them in with the impact until they broke basically. So let's start off with what I do initially. If it's right above flush, I will use a roll lock, get it as straight as I can. It'll make drilling it and center punching it the easiest. If it's broke below, more than likely a nice tipped burr tool will work the best. You have to find center the best you can. The more center the drill bit, the better off you'll be. If the bolt is broken flush or just barely below flush, what I usually end up doing is using a centering punch. I like to use the automatic ones. It's just easier that way. You don't need to be swinging a hammer or anything. They make a couple different styles. You got this style, which I call like a stare-it style. It's all built-in mechanism. There's also ones that use springs. You pull back, let go. I don't have any of them. I pretty much just use the stare-it style. If the bolt is broken farther in the hole, there's better options than the centering punch. My favorite extractor kit comes with centering pins. So all you do is you match up the right size and you drill the hole to start. Another tool that works sometimes it doesn't, are these hinge style drill bits. They're spring loaded. You match up the right bore size and you drill it. The only thing with these is you can get off quite a bit if you're not paying attention. If it's broken off deep in the bore, I do like these little guide pins. Now it comes to the drilling part. I personally believe in left-handed drill bits. I know some guys say, no, they don't work. They're wasting your time. Why would you buy a different set of drill bits? Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell you right now, I tried to remove, 10 bolts, and the only thing that worked besides welding was the left-handed drill bits. I broke a few extractors trying to get them out. Other extractors just slipped, but the left-handed drill bits actually work. The thing about the left-handed drill bits is sometimes they'll catch and they'll just torque it right out. On smaller bolts, the left-handed drill bits really shine. I have removed several valve cover bolts with just a left-handed drill bit. To me, one of the best things you can do when it comes to drilling is drill all the way through the bolt. I think it helps relieve the stress in the bolt. When you're using my favorite style extractor, which are the rigids, if you can get all the way through, that is key for A, getting the bolt completely out, and B, getting the broken bolt off the extractor when you're done. If you can, drill all the way through. Just be careful what you're doing. You'll be able to feel when you bust through so you're not drilling into whatever part you're trying to save. Now let's get into extractors. If the bolt is broken above and you don't have a welder, I believe this thing is the best extractor you can get. There's just a little collar extractor that clamps down. The thing works phenomenally well. It grips into the bolts really well. They're like 20 bucks. I don't even know if there's a real brand that makes these. I got this off of Amazon. It works for broken fasteners. It also works for screw-in studs. You can't get a double nut on them. To me, this is probably the best thing you can get outside of a welder. The thing just works really well. The problem is it has to be enough to grip on the outside. Vice grips will also do the job, but in my experience, this thing just works better. I highly recommend. They're like 20 bucks, no brainer. The most common style is what I call the tapered style. Now there's a few different variations. There's a screw style, which I don't have. There's a spiral style. Then there's just a square, basically cut edge style. They're all tapered. They're all pretty much about the same, I guess. I've never used the screw style myself. I've always just used the spiral and the basic square wedge ones. There's several brands that make these. Personally, I have the Irwins, and then I also have a set of Mayhews. The square ones I have are Mayhews. To me, I don't know which one actually works better. If you can get the square ones to bite, they hold in pretty well. I've kind of always used the spirals more because they come with the left-hand drill bits. So that's just kind of what I grabbed. And I've had them probably for 15 years. They've always worked well for me until today. Now, I have broke them before. I think that's just the thing with extractors. You're probably going to break them. Seen that coming. Should have stopped. I felt it break. So we're just having a hell of a damn time here. We got cast iron broke, just broke extractor off. Now, I mean, this thing's completely screwed. And when you break them, then you got a real problem. My favorite extractors by a very large margin are these rigids. I've had these for a while now. To me, phenomenal. Mostly use these for brass fittings and brake lines. Basically stuff that doesn't really weld very well. If you can drill all the way through the fastener, I rarely have these fail. Rarely. Today, I broke one. First time I've ever broke one. That ain't good. Snap the rigid. Damn it. I didn't even push on it that hard. Again, I don't use these in steel much besides brake fittings, mostly for brass, but these always been really good to me. I really like the design the best. I feel like all the tapered ones wedge the bolt and pushes the bolt out into the threads and makes it harder, and you're fighting yourself. I'd never quite understood what the tapered ones. These are not tapered, they're completely straight. You want to drill your hole as precise as you can, and then you hammer these in. Then you slide a little nut on here and you turn them out. I'm telling you, for brass and brake lines, these are the best things there are. I've used all these before, and these by far are the best. I was really surprised they didn't work today, and I'm very surprised I broke one. But that's the way it goes. It's bolt extraction. I like the rigid by far the most, and I was going to do a video just on the rigids. So I decided, I'm like, I'm going to go on Amazon, see if they got any knockoffs, and buy them just to compare. And I did. I bought these Think Pros. I think they're $30 or something, about half the price of the rigids. And I'm going to tell you right now, they are complete junk. They don't work at all. Don't even waste your money. If you're going to buy this style, just buy the rigids. To me, they're worth it. Like I've said before, I'd buy them over anything. Another popular style of extractors are these Irwin Hansens. What I like about them is they're short and stubby. They can fit in tight spots, and they bring all your force closer to where you need it. They're not tapered as much. I've had limited experience with them, but they do work. To me, they really shine in like stripped out Allen heads, stuff like that. My boat and side-by-side have Allen heads, and I have stripped them out and used these, and they've worked pretty well. Until today, I've never used them on an actual bolt, and they didn't work that great. On one bolt, it did start loosening up, and then it tightened up, and then it slipped. Now, I could have maybe worked it a little, but the problem is you can't really go back. You can only pretty much come out. If you try to go in, it just spins. So you can't really, it's hard for them to work the bolt, in my opinion. Where like the rigid stays pretty much locked in the whole time. Not a bad set to have. I don't think they're that pricey. Hobo Freight sells a set. I don't know anything about them. To me, I'll just buy the Irwin Hansens. They're made in America. They don't cost that much more than the Hobo Freight ones. Again, I don't know if you need them, but it's always nice to have different options. Now, if you're a pro at extraction, let people know in the comments any tips or tricks you have. I'm sure it'll be greatly appreciated. I thought I was decent at it, and today I found out I must be one of the worst in the world because we struggled and struggled and struggled. Like I said at the beginning, I think welding is your best option. Now, I know not everybody has welders, but for what you have locked up in price and all this, I think you can go get a cheap welder. I would not recommend any kind of stick welder for this. TIG welder will work, especially if you're down a little bit in the hole. I feel like with the TIG, I'm a little more in control and I can kind of stack it better. Overall, I like to use a MIG welder. To me, it just works better. I rarely can't get a bolt out with the welder. I like to get a washer that's the right size for the bolt and burn that thing on good. Then I'll take a bigger washer, set that on the little washer, burn that on really good. That'll get me a little bit wider to weld a decent sized nut on. Now, when it comes to the nut, I do it a little different than what I've seen. I weld it on the outside. I don't like welding on the inside. I feel like I can't get good enough penetration when I weld on the inside, and a lot of times the nut will just rip off. Therefore, I weld on the outside, and if I weld too much on the outside where I can't get a socket or a wrench on that nut, I will add a bolt to the inside of the nut and then weld that on. Then I'll have plenty of room to get a socket on it. I don't know if you can see, but the weld's penetrated really well to the bolt, and that's why my favorite extractor is the welder. My success rate of actually welding to the bolt is very high, and I can't even remember one that I haven't gotten out. Now, you will have tear out, but usually I'll get it out within 1 or 2 times of welding. Now, I've had several problems when it comes to welding too. It's not the end all be all. If you broke an extractor off already and you're trying to weld it, that becomes a real pain. I don't know if it's just the hardened material is hard to weld to, or even when you do fuse, that it brittles the hardened material and it breaks. I've had a lot of trouble if I went from extractor to welding. That's why I pretty much always go welder and not extractors. The whole moral of this video is basically buy a welder, you're gonna be way better off. Also, I don't know how you do much without a welder. Once you get a welder, you'll realize how useful they are. Just to wrap this all up, I'd say A, buy a welder. B, buy the rigids. They work phenomenal for brass fittings and brake lines. Phenomenal. I've never had an issue. C, try not to break the bolt in the first place. Now, Easier said than done, but work on your method of getting the bolt out first. Heat, juice it, even wax it. I don't care what anybody says, wax works. Just try your hardest to get the bolt out without breaking it. D, just buy a welder. I bought a lot of this stuff over the years just to try to improve on the welder, and none of it has worked. If it's a steel fastener and you can weld it, weld it. Now, if it's not a steel fastener, get the rigid, get the Irwin. I think you'll be way ahead. I personally wouldn't even waste my time with a lot of these taper ones. I just don't think that they're that great of option. I hope you got something out of this, and I really hope you're having a better day than me. Take care.